Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this virtual annual volunteer refresher session all about accessibility. It's been so long since I've seen you, so I figured a little reintroduction is in order. I'm Mary Maxine, and I'm the Patron Services Supervisor here at the Kauffman Center. I've even included a picture of myself on the left, just to remind you what the bottom half of my face looks like. And on the Patron Services team, I work with our wonderful administrative volunteers and tour guides, manage the volunteer training program and the apprentice program, which is the selection process for all new and returning volunteers. And I also work on accessibility initiatives so that we can all make the Kauffman Center an extra welcoming place for everyone. And accessibility is actually built into the purpose of our organization. So if you're familiar with our vision, it's to enrich the lives of everyone in our community through extraordinary and diverse performing arts experiences. So it's really at the core of what we do and at the core of our patron experience. And that's where you and I come in. So today, I'd like to share some language we can use, actions we can take, and things we can keep in mind to make sure that we're providing equitable service to everyone who comes through our doors. So today, we're going to discuss disability etiquette, or ways we can respectfully interact with and support patrons with disabilities. And we'll talk about each of the accessible amenities we already have built in for anyone to use at any time. And in addition to this presentation, we've provided a link to a short but super helpful video from the District of Columbia Office of Disability Rights. So if you didn't have a chance to watch it beforehand, be sure to follow the link on Visas Live and view it after this. It's a good one. And for those of you who have already watched it, you know that the key takeaway is that very last line, right? There's no need to be awkward, just be human. So what does being human look like? Today, we'll discuss 5 behaviors we want to exhibit in order to achieve that. And the first one is, before you do anything, ask if you may assist. So we should only provide assistance, make contact with a patron, or handle a patron's device like a cane, walker, wheelchair, scooter, or service animal with their explicit permission. This is something to especially keep in mind with someone who's transferring from their mobility device to a seat in the hall. We know that those devices generally can't remain directly next to a patron during the performance because they could be a trip hazard or block an emergency exit in the aisle. So we want to make sure that a patron is comfortable with us moving the device to another area, knows exactly where we're storing it outside of the door or in the atrium, and is reassured that in the event that emergency evacuation is required, we will return their device to them. And if someone says they don't need assistance or don't want you to handle their device, we absolutely need to respect their wishes. Just remember, they navigate the world with their disability every single day, so they know best. So if a patron asks us to hold the door, push their wheelchair, lend an arm for support, or help them find their way, we should assist as we are able and comfortable. However, if a patron asks us to support them as they transfer from their wheelchair to a seat in the hall, request assistance using the restroom, or ask you to fulfill any sort of medical need, this is something to bring to our team captain's attention so that they can discuss it with the patron and potentially find an alternative. That's because this is not something volunteers or staff members should do, even if they feel comfortable. And that's for the patron's safety and also for yours. Okay, next up, number 2 is be sure to direct questions and greetings to the patron rather than to just a companion, personal care assistant, ASL interpreter, or anyone else who might be with them. Another thing to keep in mind is our physical position. If you're speaking to a person who's using a wheelchair, for instance, consider standing across from them and a step or 2 back. We don't want them to feel disregarded if the conversation is happening completely over their head or they have to crane their neck to connect with you. And now we're on to number 3. This is a really crucial one. It's really at the forefront of our philosophy on accessibility here. We can't possibly know what a patron needs, wants, or is capable of just by looking at them. Some disabilities are apparent and some are unapparent, meaning it's something that we wouldn't know about unless they shared it with us. And every person we encounter navigates the world differently. But we don't have to worry as much about making the wrong assumption if we just follow this rule. Provide options to everyone whenever possible. So here's an easy example of this that we can use with everyone. So some people have asthma, some people have a knee that gives them trouble, some people are just wearing some very cute but very uncomfortable shoes. So it benefits everyone, even folks who may not identify as having a disability, to give them options so that they can get to choose what makes them feel safest and most comfortable. And it's as simple as saying something like, oh, you can reach the mezzanine by taking one flight of stairs or traveling to level 5 on the elevator. So we've just promoted accessibility by giving options and letting the patrons choose. It can be that easy sometimes. And here's another example of how the way we present information has the power to either make folks feel othered or make them feel like they belong. This one actually stems from an experience a patron shared with us. They have a chronic illness, which makes them tire very easily, and a lot of walking causes them pain. So they had never been here before. They parked on the street. They got turned around as they were walking through the garage and were just exhausted by the time they made their way up. They were now running 5 minutes late to the performance. So as they were standing at the top of the escalator, taking a necessary break and trying to catch their breath, a person taking tickets waved them on emphatically and yelled from about 30 feet away, come on, hurry up, you're late. As they had likely made an assumption that the patron was either unaware of the start time or even being flippant about it. Instead, this person actually had an unapparent disability. And in that moment, they needed understanding and they needed options. So here's what providing options could look like in this situation. They could walk over to the patron to check in. They could ask their team captain if someone could escort the patron directly to their seat so that they could take the most streamlined route, or even offer a courtesy wheelchair to their seat and call the elevator for them. Or they could also just simply walk over and say, hi there. I can scan your ticket and help you find the best path to your seat if you're ready. Let's see if we can get you settled so you get to see the opening number. So by approaching each situation with patience, by providing reassurance, even in stressful moments, that the patron knows they're in good hands, and by always keeping in mind that there may be more going on than what we can see, we can ensure that every patron feels truly welcome at the Kauffman Center. And next up is number 4, hold a typical conversation. So we want to speak in a clear, measured voice to every patron. There's no need to slow down your speech, over enunciate, or repeat yourself unless a patron asks you to do so. We also don't need to ask a person about their disability unless we're needing more information about how we can make their experience here a better one. Just like we wouldn't go up to someone who has hair loss and ask, hey, so just curious, at what age did you go bald? We wouldn't go up to someone and ask, hey, so have you been blind your whole life, or is this a recent thing? That can be hurtful to some folks, and it also is just not necessary for us to know. We also don't want to unintentionally patronize someone by telling them that we think it's inspirational or something that they're out and about in the world. We just want to use the same language and greetings we would share with anyone. Welcome. We're so happy you're here. And finally, number 5, use person-first language. And I want to start by saying that I know that each and every one of us in this virtual room wants to be respectful of patrons with disabilities, but sometimes it can be difficult to remember like the exact right phrase to say in the moment. So lists that show examples of person-first language are incredibly helpful, and I've actually provided one for you in today's handouts. But when you have a patron in front of you who needs help and 3 minutes until curtain, I want to give you a go-to phrase, something that I find makes it easy to use respectful language. It's one word. Accessible. So this is in place of words like handicapped, challenge, issue, special needs, afflicted with, confined to, or differently abled. Just like we have accessible parking spaces in the garage attached to our building and accessible seats in both of our halls, we have patrons who need an accessible option. So what's an accessible option? It's an all-encompassing phrase for a way that we can modify the patron experience to be more safe and comfortable for someone. So let's assume the patron doesn't indicate how they would prefer to have their disability described. Like they didn't outright say, hi there, I am hard of hearing, and it would help me to have a seat close to the stage during the Q&A. Or let's say the patron doesn't identify as having a disability, but has a need that can be addressed by our accessible amenities. There's no need to dig around in your brain for the exact right phrase if it's just not coming to you. Simply avoid the label and do what we always do. Put the patron first. And I mean that very literally. So start with, I have a patron who needs, or I'm with a patron that is requesting. So if it's necessary for us to share a person's specific need with a fellow volunteer or staff member, here are some examples of what we can say. If you have a patron who needs an accessible seat, just let your team captain know, I just talked to a patron who uses a wheelchair and their ticketed seat requires stairs. Can you please reseat them? Or a patron with sensory sensitivities would like a break from the noise and light, but the phrase sensory sensitivities escapes you. Or the person calls it something different and you're just not sure what to go with. Just say, a patron would like to step away from all the noise and lights. Could you get them set up in a Serenity room? Or if you're working with a patron who isn't comfortable in the provided theater seat, they might want to use a bariatric chair. You can tell your team captain that you have a patron who would like a standalone chair with more room, or a standalone chair that's more comfortable. Just say what the patron has requested or what you need from your team captain. So what sorts of resources and services can patrons access? At the Kaufman Center, we of course offer accommodations for audio description, ASL interpretation, captioning, and other similar requests, or other similar services rather, by request. We also offer several price tiers of accessible seating in both MKT and Hellsberg Hall, accessible parking spaces in the Arts District garage, and drop-off areas at the top of the canyon on the north side, and then on the south drop-off drive that allows guests to easily enter the building. But in addition to that, we have assistive listening devices, bariatric seating options, courtesy wheelchairs, sensory kits, Serenity rooms, universal changing tables, and a first aid office. So let's review the purpose of each of these complimentary amenities, where they're located, and how patrons can access them. So if someone is hard of hearing or would benefit from amplified or clarified sound, they might want to use an assistive listening device or an ALD. These can be checked out in the gift shop by giving an ID to the staff member there, which is usually our dear friend Columbus. And there are actually 3 types of devices available, and they're described on our website in a really handy document, but it's totally okay to not have them memorized. If a patron has questions or any issues with their ALD, just direct them to the gift shop and they can help them there. Next up, bariatric chairs are designed for patrons who would be more comfortable in a standalone chair rather than in the provided theater seat. So these chairs are slightly lower to the ground, have a wider frame, and coordinate to the colors of the hall. So your team captain knows where they're stored. They can bring one to your section and place it in an approved location so that it doesn't get in the way of any emergency exit aisles. And we also have courtesy wheelchairs, including bariatric options, available at all of the exterior doors for patrons to use before a performance, during intermission, or after the performance. And just so you know, remaining in a borrowed wheelchair during their entire visit is not an option at this time. And volunteers can retrieve these for patrons or ask a staff member for assistance. And just as a reminder, when it comes to wheelchairs, Kaufman Center volunteers and staff are unable to lift, carry, or otherwise physically assist with transferring a patron into a wheelchair or perform any other personal attendant services. So that's for their safety and, of course, for yours as well. And next up are sensory kits, which are particularly popular with younger patrons and folks with sensory sensitivities, but they're available for anyone who would like some tools to feel safe during our exciting performances. So each drawstring bag contains noise muffling headphones, a weighted lap pad, and a handheld sensory item. The handheld sensory items right now are these very cool glitter tubes. And you better believe I also have one on my desk because they are very fun. So these are available for checkout at CoatCheck. And just like the assistive listening devices, patrons will trade an ID card of some sort for the kit and then return it to CoatCheck and get their ID back whenever they leave. And we also have 2 quiet, comfortable spaces where patrons can step away from the performance, and we call them Serenity rooms. So these spaces offer comfortable furniture, an outlet, dimmable lights, handheld sensory items, and a monitor on which to watch the performance in either hall. So these spaces were designed with nursing parents and guardians and patrons with sensory sensitivities in mind. However, they can and should be used by any patron who needs a break from the performance for any reason. So there's a Serenity room located inside of MKT mezzanine door 5 and another inside of MKT mezzanine door 2. So the spaces are identical and they're both unlocked for every performance, event, and concert, whether that's taking place on Brandmeier in Hellsberg Hall or in MKT. So to access the Serenity rooms, you'll want to direct them to a team captain who will show them all of the features of the space and check in after 20 minutes. Although we do want to note that patrons are not required to leave the room after 20 minutes, we just check in after this amount of time for a few reasons. To be able to know if it's available for other patrons to use, to help patrons return to the hall safely and at appropriate times in the program, and so we know who's in the space if we have to evacuate for an emergency. And finally, our universal changing tables and first aid office. So our partners in the disability community have shared that one barrier for many people interested in exploring cultural institutions like ours is that there just aren't places for them to attend to the health and wellness needs of their older children and adult family members. So that's why we have a universal changing table and diaper disposal system installed in the mezzanine family restroom, and that's the intermission lobby on level 5. And this can be used by any patron of any age and generally any size, anytime. There's also a medical cot, a privacy curtain, a diaper disposal system, and a sharps disposal system in the first aid office on the plaza lobby level. And that's actually the door right across from the volunteer office. This space can be used under the guidance of a team captain, and that's because the KC medical staff also utilize that space, and we want to make sure we only have one party in there at a time for privacy reasons. And I did want to share a quick note about service animals since a few volunteers asked about them in the survey. So service animals are welcome in the facility and in the performance halls. If necessary, the NPB staff members who manage the security screening process will ask the 2 legally permitted questions to confirm that an animal performs a service function at the building entrance. So if you see a dog or a miniature horse in the building, you can assume they're a welcome member of our audience. We ask that volunteers accommodate patrons with service animals and those patrons sitting near them. So if a service animal appears to be blocking an emergency egress pathway, just share that with your team captain so that they can address that. And most importantly, although it's very tempting, we want to make sure to never ever touch a service animal unless you are specifically invited to, which likely won't happen in a busy public space like ours. When a service animal is working, they need their full attention on their job and on their human. And at a typical annual volunteer refresher session, you would have index cards to write down any questions you wanted to pose. But since we're virtual this year, please send any clarifying questions or scenarios you'd like us to address at volunteer@kaufmancenter.org or send us a message inside of Visas Live. We are here to help. And finally, thank you for being the wonderful, welcoming people that you are. You make the Kaufman Center an extra special place for everyone, and we really appreciate your dedication in making it accessible to all members of our community. And I absolutely can't wait to see you inside our beautiful building again soon, but until then, please stay safe and be well. Thanks so much.